Hey there, bibliophiles and those raising bibliophiles. Without ratings and warning labels, finding which books are appropriate for your children to read is like navigating wild terrain without a map and a compass. I don't know about you, but I have been burned more than once handing my child a book that I thought was clean and appropriate for them to read. I'm a fellow mom, educator, reading specialist, and literary enthusiast trying to find great books for my children and yours to read. If you're looking for real reviews from a mom with a biblical worldview, then welcome and enjoy this week's book review. This week's book review is One Wrong Step by Jennifer A. Nielsen, and this was definitely a fortuitous add to my reading list this summer. I have already been captivated by stories such as Blind Descent by Brian Dickinson, Hidden Mountains by Michael Werchit, as well as Into Thin Air by John Krakauer. And so continuing with the theme of my recent reading, Nielsen's newest novel is set in 1939 as a teen sets off to follow in George Mallory's footsteps, trying to be the first to summit Mount Everest. However, if the goal of the expedition wasn't enough, concerns over Nazis and the looming World War II are present, as well as 14-year-old Atlas's struggle to reconcile hurt and pain of the past. So the story opens with Atlas and his father climbing Kings Peak in Utah in July 1936. And so I'm just going to read to you a little bit of the opening of this chapter. And it does begin with a little quote or of some things that George Mallory is known to have said. But chapter 1 opens, and she also gives like little definitions of things throughout. It's been almost 3 years since my dad and I climbed Kings Peak, but I still think about the summer of 1936 every single day. My family had traveled from our home in London to America to visit my grandparents. They lived out west in the state of Utah, where mountains line the horizon in any direction I looked. The tallest of them was named Kings Peak. You two should climb it, my mom had said to my dad and me. How I wish I could go with you. I wished for that too. For my whole life, the three of us had always climbed together. My earliest memory was holding Mum's hand as she let me shuffle up a dirt trail. It never mattered to her if I was slow. She was happy just to be on a climb. Then last year, she needed to hold my hand while she shuffled up the trail. Mom was sick. That was why we had come to Utah. Her doctors thought the dry heat of the desert might do her good. Maybe it would put the color back in her cheeks. Finally, Dad was persuaded to bring me to Kings Peak. What do you think, Atlas? Shall we have a go at it? Atlas. I was named after the Titan god who carried the skies on his shoulders. It was the kind of name that came with responsibility, as if I was born to be in the mountains. Dad once told me it was a perfect name for a son he hoped would one day join him in climbing Everest. I wanted that too, but for now my first summit attempt would be at Kings Peak. On the morning we said goodbye to Mum, her eyes filled with tears. I thought of how disappointed she must be, not able to come with us. She dismissed the tears with a sniff and a weak smile, then pulled out a scarf she had knitted. It was thick and warm, and the same shade of blue as our British flag. You'll always wear this, I hope, she said, tenderly wrapping it around my neck. Especially if you ever feel cold or alone, then you'll have it, won't you? Sorry. I know how the story ends. I kissed her cheek as we left, convinced that by the time we returned from our climb, Mum might be well enough to get out of bed. My 12th birthday was coming soon. Her recovery was the only gift I wanted. So he continues talking about his experience on that climb. His dad protects him. A storm comes up, and there's lightning as they're on this mountain. But upon returning from the climb with his father, he's met with the tragic news that his mother has died. So from there, the story takes the reader to Tibet as the expedition to climb Everest is underway. Throughout the narration, Nielsen weaves together these flashbacks of earlier times and details that lead up to what's currently happening and Atlas's thoughts on given situations and his interactions with different people. One of those flashbacks reveals that the Nazis are also desiring to make an attempt on Everest to help further their goal of world domination. The tension is present for much of the story as the characters fear that a Nazi or two might be on the mountain with them. However, towards the later end of the story, so just as a spoiler, the tension is broken and they realize that it's actually been a local that has in some way been helping and guiding them in a way. And so they're there are not any Nazis, at least revealed to them. Atlas's father is a map maker and an avid mountaineer, which really speaks to his inclusion in the expedition. There is a wealthy man, Mr. Blake. The leader of their group is Mr. Tomley. There's Mr. Levinsky, and then there's also this Texas doctor and his daughter, Mr. Pearson, and his daughter, Maddie, that they meet while they're up there. And he's really trying to study altitude sickness and what it does to the body. There's also several Sherpas, but one of them that's most notable is Chodok. So Atlas and Maddie are not to travel any further than advanced base camp. However, after an avalanche on the mountain and hearing an SOS on their radio set, they're determined to climb, even though this whole time they've been told not to, and that they're to save themselves. Chodok is injured, and so he cannot climb to the needed heights with them. Maddie and Atlas are on their own. In addition to the tough terrain, they have to face their fears along the way. Maddie is a good friend. She is pushing Atlas to reckon with his emotions and anger while climbing. This leads to Atlas's breakthrough regarding the death of his mother and the anger he has towards his father. So a lot of this comes to a head in chapter 37, specifically on page 263. Finally, I let it out. I think my dad knew my mom was going to pass on. I think he took me hiking so that I wouldn't be there when it happened. Maddie stared back at me for several seconds, as if waiting for me to say more, but I had nothing else. That's it, she asked. That's why you're angry? I never got to say goodbye. I'd reckon you did. Did you give her a hug and kiss before you went on the hike? Of course, like always. But then as I thought about it, it hadn't been like my usual goodbyes. A quick kiss on her cheek. No, this time she had wrapped her arms around me and held me there for nearly a minute, even though it was hard on her to lift her arms for that long. Then she had given me the scarf. You'll always wear this, I hope, she'd said to me, especially if you ever feel cold or alone. Then you'll have it, won't you? My mom had known it would be our final goodbye. My father had known as well. Several times on the hike, I had caught him brushing away tears, but he explained it was sweat. Young as I was then, I had believed him. I sat down on my sleeping bag, and for the first time in years let myself feel the sadness of losing my mom. It wasn't mine, and it wasn't fair. But none of that was my dad's fault. Maddie said, your dad saved you from a sad memory, and instead gave you a beautiful final memory of your mother. I think that was the kindest thing he could have done for you. I wiped the tears from my cheeks before they froze there. I'd have to think about that for a while, but maybe she was right. In the end, everyone is saved. Some toes are lost due to frostbite. Nielsen also ends it with Atlas a little bit older and helping in World War II as he's unloading the wounded arriving in England. I definitely encourage you to check out my full written review at holdingsteadfastreaders.com. There are some mentions about some of the spiritual traditions of climbing and from Tibet and things that had to take place before they were allowed to climb the mountain. So some of those spiritual aspects I kind of mentioned. There's also Maddie's mom, who supposedly has premonitions. Again, that's presented in there. There's a few quotes, some of the things that is going on in the story and some of that development, so definitely check that out. Obviously, I really enjoyed this story. Nielsen did a great job of weaving in some of the realities of climbing Mount Everest, the effects that it has on the body, as well as historical information about the time and Mallory's attempt. To be completely honest, just like I can't even read those few sections without it sort of getting to me. Even the end of the book, the very last page had me in tears. And so I don't know if it's just being a parent or just the way that she wrote and dealt with Atlas's struggles. He's just a really good character. I felt like you could really connect with the deep pain that he was feeling. So there's definitely some great themes about bravery and courage to rise again, to look to the future, to not live with your eyes on the past. So whether it's the death of a loved one or deep disappointment like Atlas, we're all called to keep our eyes on the Lord and that he's our strength, that with him we can help rise, we can climb, we can be on the wings like eagles. And so if you are looking for a clean read for your student or child, I definitely would recommend One Wrong Step by Jennifer A. Nielsen. And hopefully this has been helpful to you as a parent, to give you some information about books. Hopefully you'll join me next week for another book review.